And this is projected, so I can't stand in the way of it, can I? All right. Technical difficulties, but we're getting it going, aren't we? Would it be easier if we turn off a light, do they all go, or do we have the mid lighting?
Oh, that's
better.
perfect.
Yeah, that's better. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Greetings, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out. It's so wonderful to see so many wonderful faces. Yay, familiar ones, new ones. So, we're talking about Indigenous healing of modern times. And I was so honored to be invited to speak here tonight. And I have to say that it was, I was reading for the UT students in your press release. I was reading through that. They were kind enough to send it to me, and they said, we're excited to have Deborah Eagle Cloud Ayers here as an expert in Native American spirituality. Whew. I said, wow, that's a big one to live up to. So I would like to preface this by saying I'm an expert in the Native American spirituality that I've learned over the last 30 years now. So that's what I'm going to be speaking from. There's all sorts of different schools of thought, different tribes, different nations that have different traditions. So what I'm going to share with you is simply what I've learned along the way and how it is that I help other people with that information. Okay, so I will start off by saying what you see up here is my medicine bundle. As a medicine woman, I carry a medicine bundle, and I have lots of different types of medicine that I keep in my office at my practice. And I spent some time there today in meditation and kind of asked everything that was in the room, what was needed for you this evening. For everybody out in Facebook land, for everybody that's here tonight, what was really important, because I'm not here just as a lecturer. I'm not here just to, say things and teach you something. I'm actually here to help each of your hearts heal in whatever space it is that's needed tonight, okay? So that's where the medicine comes in, and I trust that divine connection, that whatever you really need tonight in your highest good is what's going to happen, all right? So I've already opened my bundle, and in that way, I have created this as a sacred sanctuary. This is a sacred space. So essentially, when a medicine person opens their bundle, they've created this to be a chapel, a church, a sacred circle is what we call it, and that's what you're sitting in here today with. So in my medicine bundle that came today is my pipe. And I am a Cherokee pipe carrier. I was ordained such when I was 19 years old. And this is my pipe. We'll talk a little bit about pipe ceremony in a bit. But my pipe definitely wanted to join us. My abalone shell with my smudge stick comes to every ceremony because I used this and blessed the room before you all came in it to create that space. So that's here. We're going to talk about smudging tonight. With my smudge stick also comes my tobacco and my sweetgrass. Tobacco, sweetgrass, and sage are the sacred herbs that we use to create sacred space with. So that's what clears any negative energy, that's what blesses us, and so that's what I brought with me. I always bring a piece of my teacher with me. And I happen to channel my teacher, Dr. Gadal Kaba, through crystal. And so this particular crystal is what connects our energy together more quickly than anything else. And so this is always with me, whether I'm in my office or I have my bundle with me. I channel her through this, and this is a sacred piece that she had imbued with her energy when she was in India. So that came with me. And tonight, my rosary that was blessed by the Pope many years ago when my grandmother went there came with me because my roots are in Catholicism, and so I still have a lot of that comes through. So my Catholicism, my Native American spirituality, and I'm also a student at the Buddhist Temple of Toledo, so my Zen practice also aligns with all of these things. I brought my drum, which we played on the way in, actually. So I did a blessing of the entire campus when I was walking to the building. And this is my very special medicine bag that was made for me when I lived out in New Mexico. And this is my pouch that I carry all of my tobacco and my sage in. And it's called a rain purse, because when I walk, it makes the noise of the rain. Take that one with me as well. And that was my bundle for tonight. So as we open that up, this becomes the sacred space. There's my show and tell. Let's see, go back here. So, I put together this little prezi so that you guys have some visuals and we have a little bit of form to talk through. But you know what might be easier rather than waiting to have questions at the end is as I'm going through things, if you have questions, if something's coming up, that's an easier way for me to really bring the healing into the space as we go. So if it evolves and it goes outside of the presentation, that's not a big deal. I just kind of let whatever come in is going to come in. If we have questions from Facebook, Annie will answer for us too. So we're going to go over some basic forms of prayer. And these are things that are easy for anybody to learn and adapt. You don't need to be specially blessed to do it. You don't need to be ordained. You don't need to do anything like this. All these things are things any of you can do, okay? So, the first one is smudging. The smudge stick, like I talked about, is made up of sage. Sometimes we'll bundle other things into it. When I lived out in New Mexico, a Pueblo Indian took me onto the reservation and taught me how to gather sage in a sacred way and gave me a blessing to do so, which was a great honor. They take the sage, dry it out. There's different kinds of sages that grow in different areas of the country. All of it is sacred. Sometimes we wrap the sweetgrass with it. Sometimes they'll wrap lavender with it. We'll put different things as a part of it. And when you burn it, there's a great oil. That is what releases the smell that everybody gets, okay? I'm going to kind of just give a little smudging to everybody. I'm not going to do too much because I don't want to agitate anybody that might have any respiratory issues, okay? But this is a form of blessing. And like I said before, we remove all negative energy with it. And create a sacred space. So now this is something you can do in your home. We smudge our house daily. I smudge my office between every person that I'm working with so that I have a nice, clear, open space for the next person's energy to come in. Yeah.
What is it particularly about sage that has the power to clear negativity?
Good question. So different herbs have different vibrations. And while I don't understand the deeper science of that, I've read about a lot of it. I studied herbology 20 years ago and got my certificate in aromatherapy. So when we're looking at any plant, plants have all sorts of healing properties. And sometimes the roots have a different property than the leaf, has a different property than the stem, has a different property than the oil we pull from it. With the sage, it has such a high vibration on all of those levels. It just, there's a way they can measure it. It just takes all the negative electricity in the room and transfers it. Okay. So yeah, so when you get into herbology and all the different kinds of healing properties of plants, that's how those, different parts of the plants will do different types of healing. And oftentimes what's interesting is that the part of the plant, the fruit sometimes, the leaf, often you find a reflection as to what part of the body it may be helping. So let me think of a good one for that. Is anybody, let's see here, I think it's beets, good for our heart, good for heart health. And so you have a reflection there of how it looks, and you can see the reflection of it in the parts of the body that it helps as well. It's really interesting when you get into that. I had another question, somebody asking, yes.
What part of New Mexico did you study in?
Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I lived in Cherokee, North Carolina, and studied there, and then I studied with a Pueblo medicine man, and then I studied, and now I'm currently studying with Dr. Goodall Kaba, and she's the one who ordained me a medicine woman 3 years ago now. So it's been a long study with many wonderful teachers. So, okay, more forms of prayer. Tobacco ties. So we take that sacred tobacco and we can put them into little squares and tie them, and we hang them. Usually you can have a tree that you hang them from, and you kind of make that sacred. It's like, it reminds me when I go to the Catholic Church of lighting a candle for somebody. So a tobacco tie, you put the tobacco into a little square of fabric, and you hold it, and you put all your prayer, especially if it's for a specific person. That's if you have somebody that's sick in your family, everybody can make a tobacco tie for them. They put all the prayers into those ties, and then we hang them all on one tree. And then that's kind of like the sacred place we can keep going back to hold that person in our hearts and offer up all of our healing prayers for them. So that's, tobacco ties are an easy form of prayer. And then drumming. So drumming connects us to the heartbeat of Mother Earth, okay? Sometimes, let's see how my drum sounds in here. It's a little higher than it usually is. So as soon as you go in through the weather, it was cold. I was playing it as I was coming in. It's a lot higher than it is at my office when it's reacclimated, but the drum brings us back to Mother Earth. It brings us back to that heartbeat that keeps us grounded and reminds us that we are all one, that we are one with the earth and we are one with all living beings. We are one with all the two-leggeds and the four-leggeds. They're all sacred. And when we find ourselves in that space where we can all come together, that's where healing happens. So when we're talking about the modern times, you know, how does a form of prayer, the drumming often comes with singing or chanting. And when that all comes together, it just grounds us right through our feet into the ground, into the earth, and reminds us that all this stuff we get up in our head, all these dialogues and conversations we get lost in, all the stress that we bring up and we create for ourselves, really can dissolve when we bring ourselves back down again. And the drum is a beautiful way of doing that. Let's see. And because we're not connected into the Wi-Fi, that video is not going to play for us, unfortunately. So the video was of the drum and how even in modern times, we have the traditional Native American drum being used at powwows, being used at family gatherings, and the power, which was what I wanted to play so you could hear, the power behind many people drumming in the same beat and chanting at the same time together. It's overwhelming. It's amazing how it can like wash across you like an ocean wave and just take you back down into that space where you can be more relaxed, where you can be connected, and where you're not in your head being stressful and having those dividing thoughts anymore, bringing us all together. And when you hear the chanting that happens with that is a very, very old traditional healing form for the Native Americans. That's very powerful also. It brings everybody into the same space, and there's a frequency that's happening and a vibration that happens that you can literally feel going through your body. The frequency and the sound waves of that is very powerful. So one of the most important things, the very first ceremony I was ever taught was the medicine wheel. And Gene Rowe, the Cherokee elder that was my first teacher, he, my necklace came apart, didn't it?
Mm-hmm.
He taught me the medicine wheel first. It was beautiful. I was in North Carolina on the reservation with him. And he took me to this place, this mountain. We had to hike halfway up this mountain. And he said, have you ever seen a natural medicine wheel? I said, what do you mean natural? He said, one that you didn't lay out and create yourself. And I said, I don't think so. He said, come on. So we hiked up this, I was out of breath, and this old man, he was just going right for it. And we come up on this breaking point, and it just opened up on this mountaintop down in North Carolina, and there was this tree that had two trunks that were entwined. I mean, it wasn't just any tree, it was just like, oh my goodness. And he said, that's the south point. Look beyond it. And the medicine wheel was probably as large as this room. And I saw right ahead of it on the north point was a crystal, like this little one, but it was about this big. It was like a tree trunk itself. It was about 3 to 4 feet high. The west point had a very large boulder that had all sorts of crystal quartz in it. And when the sun hit it, I mean, it was just like beaming off all these magical sunbeams that are coming out in different color. And the east side had the beginning of a waterfall. It was the top part of a waterfall. And so the center was a space that they had started having fires again. So they could bring all the elements together in this medicine wheel. And I said, this is amazing. And he said, look down at your feet. And everywhere I was walking were crystal quartz. It was like the mountain was made of that. It was very, very powerful, very high vibration. And he took me over to where the waterfall was. And we looked over on this next little clearing. And he said, that's where all the medicine people gathered from all the different tribes. Every few years, there would be a bringing together of the nations. And it was the medicine people and the shamans that would come together and actually make the decisions for the different tribes together to keep them united. And that was this space, and it was just this most sacred place to sit and take it all in. And that was where he taught me about the medicine wheel. And so the medicine wheel, Google it. There are hundreds of different medicine wheels. But what it shows is, you know, you can associate everything with the medicine wheel. So we have animals. In this particular medicine wheel, the buffaloes in the north, eagles in the east, we have the bear in the west, and the wolf in the south. And with those come different things that align with that. So we have a way of understanding the different directions. Now there are more than 4 directions. There's Father Sky and Mother Earth. So in the Native American tradition, most tribes follow, we have 6 different directions. In the Zen tradition, we have 10 directions. So everybody has a little something different, but this is really beautiful. Now the circle in the medicine wheel is the circle of life. And there's lots of different ways to understand it. And you can kind of keep layering onto the medicine wheel different ways to recognize where you are on the medicine wheel and where you need to pray, where you need to pull energy from, where you need to heal from. So we have the 4 different elements. We have the different animals. The animals have different medicine to share with you, different traits. We have the different kingdoms. But really, what I always found interesting is that it's also the cycle of life as we have childhood and birth, and then we move into adolescence and adulthood, and then our elder years. And in the Native American tradition, and I can't say I've studied all traditions, but in all the ones that I've looked at, that is the tradition that honors the elders the most. I was very impressed when I lived on the reservation and when I saw the different traditions, both East and Western, how much the elders were revered. And it's something that I have a really hard time when people aren't doing that. So, to honor the wisdom, to recognize that you yourself are going to be old one day. You're going to die one day. And in the process of being old and dying, how do you want to be cared for? How do you want to be treated? How do you want to be revered? Do you want somebody to look at you and just think, there's an old woman, there's an old guy, and they just put that label on you and see you that way without ever recognizing that you have this whole life that's led to wisdom and lessons and knowledge that you can share with them, that you were once young, that you were once a college student, that you were once a maiden, a mother, a young father, that you made mistakes, that you learned from, and you have something still to offer, something to give, that you're not just supposed to be in a rocking chair waiting to die. And so to honor our elders is a very important Native American tradition that I treasure deeply. Let's see. Here's another medicine wheel. This one breaks us down into emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual. That's another way to understand the 4 quadrants of the directions. And that can be superimposed. This is even culture and language and how they're embedded. Everything can be understood this way. When I lived in Cherokee, part of the reason I went down there, I was a drug and alcohol counselor, and they asked me to come in and start working in their treatment center. Their treatment center was so interesting because they didn't just get somebody in there and start detoxing them. They brought them in. They connected them back to their spirit again. It wasn't just about treating their body. It was about treating their body, their mind, and first and foremost their spirit. Because when our spirit is weak, we don't have the ability to heal as deeply and as well. And so on the reservation, they would take the addicts that they brought in and they would put them through ceremony first. So they opened it with the pipe ceremony, making actual commitment to something, finding peace with themselves and with those who are going to take care of them, making an agreement and a pact. And then they would move them into the medicine wheel, reconnecting them to Creator, reconnecting them to themselves, reconnecting them to what mattered and where their direction is, how they got lost. And then they would go into a sweat lodge. And that was when the detox would really start. But it wasn't just a detox, it was a detox connected to their Creator, connected to their spirit, connected to their spirituality, and what was important, it was fully supported by their community, not just random people paid to be there and take care of them. I'm not saying the helping profession doesn't care. I know many, many nurses that help with addiction issues and would give their lives upside down to help people. But on the reservation, it was brought back to where they were rooted in their spirit. And that made all the difference. And it was fascinating to watch and learn and to participate in. So this particular medicine wheel I found talks about the mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual, and how they actually adapt health plan programs around the medicine wheel, which is just another way of, adapting the cycle of life.
Was it only Cherokee that was allowed into this rehab facility?
I wouldn't say that it was only Cherokee. It was anybody in that area, but it didn't serve you to do that facility unless you were, wanting to anchor in your spirituality in order to heal. Because again, we look at addiction as a symptom, something that is showing us and pointing to something else is wrong. There's something that's sick in our heart before it ever manifests in our body. And we might not always know what that is. We might not always have our finger on that or recognize it. It might be buried in our subconscious. But when you really dig into the heart of it all, that's, you get into where that started, the origin of that. And if you start there, then you can start to unfold a much deeper healing for yourself. So the sacred pipe. This is one picture of the sacred white buffalo calf woman. And she was the bringer of the pipe. So I'll give you the shortened version. Two Sioux gentlemen, younger gentlemen, two warriors were sent out after a long time of the tribe having no food. And the chief said, "Go out and scout for me, see if you can find any buffalo." And they were searching and not finding anything. And then far away on a field, up and overcoming a hill, was a white figure carrying a pipe. And she was floating. And the two men were in awe of her. She was the most beautiful woman they had ever seen. She was also glowing. She wore a white buffalo calf skin dress. And it was just, they were in awe of her. And the one gentleman had impure thoughts about her. He was kind of hot for teacher. And he cast his eyes upon her and turned to dust. The other one was in awe of her and said, "She's floating, her feet are not on the ground, she must be sent from Great Spirit," and bowed his head and said, "How can I serve you?" And she later said, "Go tell your chief he needs to prepare a teepee for me to come." And so the story goes, and there's lots that happens in the teepee. She does her 4 rounds. She talks about the sacredness of the 4 directions and what they need to continue to do in ceremony. And she presents them with the pipe and says, "This is the most important of the 7 ceremonies you have. The smoke from this pipe directly connects you to the Creator. Smoke this with pure hearts to keep everybody together." That's how we have the peace pipe. And to directly allow your prayers to go to Great Spirit. If you honor what I say, you will be rewarded. And so they did. And a few days later, they came upon more buffalo than they knew what to do with. And from then on, the buffalo were the ones that provided all that the Sioux needed. They gave them their meat. They gave them the bones to make their tools with. They gave them their furs to stay warm. They gave them their skulls to have more ceremony with. And the buffalo provided everything. And to this day, any white buffalo that's born is considered a coming again of the buffalo calf woman. And there have been a few. So that was the story of how the pipe came to be and how they taught that, how they were taught that ceremony. Now that was the Sioux Nation. The pipe ceremony is one of the ceremonies that is recognized by all the different nations, and most of the different tribes use a pipe in different ways. They might, have a little bit of a different take on it here, how they do it. The Cherokee do it a little bit different than the Pueblo do it when I learned it. But a few things are always important. One, you never smoke anything but sacred tobacco out of this pipe. And sacred tobacco is actually all herbal. There really isn't much tobacco to it. And you really are taking it in, you're puffing on the pipe. You're always holding the bowl in the left hand. You awaken the pipe. And so when I learned from the Cherokee, well, let me start with this. Pipes are typically 2 pieces, the bowl and the stem. Okay, so we have our yin and our yang energy, and you can store them separately, and putting them together is what awakens the pipe. Or, as my teacher taught me, to keep it all as one piece. When I go and have pipe ceremony, I'll take a little bit of dirt from the ground and rub it on the pipe, and that's what awakens her. You always hold the bowl in the left hand, and you always offer it to the 6 directions before you smoke it yourself. And then it goes around in a circle if a circle is there. And smoking from the same pipe and sharing that same smoke as a prayer to the Creator is a way that we all stay connected and show that we are one and honor that. So that's also how it became a peace pipe. So you'd have different nations or different tribes having some sort of an altercation. And it was, to come and sit down at the table and negotiate or reconcile or try to figure it out together would be done with a pipe. And that was a way of guaranteeing that I'm here to find resolve with you. My ego's not here. I'm not here to feel better about being stronger or bigger or badder than you. I'm not here to push your buttons. I'm not here to find some sort of other glory. I'm here to find resolve because you are one with me and I am one with you, and it is only in our aspect of ego right now that we're somehow not getting along. So let's smoke the pipe together and figure it out. Let's see. There's another picture of Buffalo Calf Woman. I believe this is a Lakota gentleman. And I put that picture in because there's also the difference between smoking the pipe alone or smoking the pipe in a group. So while I may have personal prayer by smoking the pipe by myself, I have a smaller pipe I do that with. I have a personal pipe. This is my ceremonial pipe that I'll use if I'm invited to do a pipe ceremony with a group. But either one, you can have that healing inside yourself with yourself, especially when there are different aspects of yourself not getting along, right? And so sometimes when we're so cognitively tangled, it's a good time to stop, just like meditation. It's another form of meditation. So the red road leads to living sacred, as do most spiritual paths. But we like these words. We like the word sacred a lot. And that's my website, livesacred.org. That is what resonates for me. My teacher is walk sacred, talk sacred, and live sacred. It's a little bit different, but what does it mean to live sacred? So before I get into this, I want to ask you, what does it mean to you to live sacred? Because there's a lot of different things that can mean, and there's a lot of different ways that can show up. Anybody? Somebody want to share with me how living sacred shows up in their life?
To me, it's serving.
Serving.
I learned through my old years that to serve is a privilege when you have the opportunity to serve others. I became a medical missionary, and to have that opportunity to bring healing and some kind of, we just came back from the Florida assisting the victims after Hurricane Michael, and it's you bring just to be there and have the opportunity to serve, and to me that is sacred for me.
Very sacred. Thank you for your service. Serving others. Anybody else? What's your way of living sacred? What helps keep you grounded? Yeah.
I found that diet is something very important for me to be safe.